A third whistleblower claims the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons has manipulated key findings in its report of an alleged 2018 chemical attack in Syria. A new whistleblower reportedly backs complaints made previously by two former OPCW employees. They say a chemical watchdog tried to suppress evidence gathering in the case. In April 2018, U.S. and its allies accused the Syrian government of carrying out a gas attack in the city of Douma. At the time, Damascus dismissed the accusation. However, later that month, U.S., Britain, and France unleashed a bombing campaign against Syria in response to that attack. And joining us now for this news review is Paul Rudy, former U.S. government advisor out of Berkeley, California, and Mr. Jason Unruhe, political commentator, joining us out of Ontario, Canada. Gentlemen, I'd like to welcome you both to the program. Paul, I guess we'll start with you. Your initial thoughts on this?
Well, there's been a cascade of revelations about the way the OPCW has been manipulated, and some of the revelations have gone back years to other events as well. But this case gathered a lot of attention because, first of all, there was Ian Henderson, whose memo was released and caused a stir, and then more recently we have the anonymous whistleblower who met with journalists and other experts from around the world and just answered all their questions about it. And now we have the third one coming forward as well. We don't know the name, but and some of the revelations are just astounding, such as the fact that the report that was written up after the investigation in Douma itself by the scientists were compiled and written up without any input from the scientists at all. The scientists had nothing to do with writing up the report. They provided information, much of which was never used and was often misstated. But they had nothing to do with actually writing up the final report. It was people who were never on the ground in Syria who wrote it up.
Now, Jason, welcome to the program. I'm going to swing over to you. Stark similarities between what happened in Douma and Khan Sheikhoun. The West, without any kind of investigation, went ahead and carried out retaliatory strikes against the Syrian government. Your thoughts on all this?
I think this is perfectly predictable that the United States would carry out some kind of attack just like this. It's clear that this whole situation was fabricated from the beginning with the use of the White Helmets, who primarily receive their funding from the United Kingdom and the United States. They have openly allied with al-Qaeda forces inside the country, and there has been at least some questionable acts of them even allying with ISIS on some cases. Not tremendously clear, but the accusations have been made. But for the most part, they have acted as the ambulatory service of al-Qaeda, and they are the ones who are active in the areas where these alleged chemical attacks took place. Now, there have been previous organizations that have called what they do as completely fraudulent. Swedish Doctors for Human Rights has poured over much of the footage of them giving first responder treatment to wounded civilians inside the country, and they declare most of it to have been completely phony. And in one famous case, they said that the placing of a needle into the heart of a baby would have actually killed the baby had it not already been clear that the baby was dead. I mean, there's been a long series of videos that have been released detailing exactly how these incidents are fake. So I think it's very clear that this is a psyop by the United States, Saudi Arabia, Israel, etc., in order to give a justification for carrying out bombing attacks to support their backed rebels inside of the country. And the fact that this OPCW report very clearly confirms that this was fake does not surprise me in the very least. In fact, it shows that there are some people of significant moral character inside the organization that do want the truth to be known.
And Paul, in both cases of Khan Sheikhoun and Duma, Damascus, the government in Damascus clearly said, why would we carry out a gas attack against our own civilians? Terrorists are losing there. The foreign-backed militants are basically just a couple apartment buildings from being completely wiped out. It makes no sense. What is the world thinking, even for a second, entertaining, believing the West's approach on this or its angle?
Well, as I've said before, and you'll pardon the pun, none of the incidents back to Hola and others in 2013 all the way forward, not a single one of these accusations of the use of poison gas passes the smell test. The smell test being that there's absolutely no benefit for the Syrian government to use such weapons. They achieved no, the weapons, the so-called use of weapons didn't create any military advantage, any strategic advantage. The only thing it did was essentially to invite powerful nations like the United States to intervene and cause more death and destruction and to try to slow down. This is what there's a meeting that was recorded, sound recorded in the United Nations in New York of John Kerry meeting with groups, including basically terrorists, who were representing 4 different groups of so-called rebels in Syria, and they said, well, you know, al-Nusra is, meaning Al-Qaeda, they're doing most of the fighting here. We have to support them. Never mind that they're terrorists, and we think they're heroes. Well, who's he dealing with? Well, what are they're trying to pull the wool over everyone's eyes, and it's falling apart. The only thing they can do is to lie and make sure that their lies are published in the mainstream media.
And Jason, the thing is that the Syrian government turned over its stockpile of chemical weapons to the OPCW quite some time ago. I believe it was 2013, or maybe even before that. My question to you, we know very well that there are intelligence apparatuses of the U.S., the CIA, Mossad, the MI, whoever you want to say, out of Britain and their friends. They have feet on the ground. They have strong intel inside Syria. They haven't been yet able to provide a shred of evidence at one warehouse, one storage box of chemical weapons controlled by the Syrian government throughout this time. So, but they want the world to believe that the Syrian government is using gas left and right against the civilians.
Essentially, yes. They're just making this accusation without providing really anything whatsoever to back it up. There is the famous instance where the CNN reporter went to Syria and picked up a piece of cloth and claimed that it smelled like chlorine. If this had actually been the case, she would have just sniffed a chemical weapon and probably would have died as a result. But this was such a ridiculous stunt to try to impress the public or try to press a particular viewpoint on the public that there was a chemical attack. It made absolutely no sense whatsoever. The fact that the United States or any country has been able to provide any actual evidence of these attacks whatsoever, or any connection to the Syrian government in any way, shape, or form, certainly demonstrates the completely hollow and meaningless nature of these accusations, that they are wholly without merit.
Gentlemen, thank you both for joining us. Time has gotten the better of us. Paul LaRudy from Berkeley, California, and Jason Unruhe joining us there out of Ontario, Canada. And viewers, that's a wrap for this segment of your PressTV's News Review. Thank you for tuning in, and goodbye for now.